Everybody, welcome into the Apples and Genos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name is Nate Groot Nibelink. I'm the creator of Apples and Genos, originator of the Zero G Draft Strategy. And in this podcast, I'm going to go over the most puzzling players league-wide as submitted by the Apples and Genos Discord server. Let's get it. All right, welcome in everyone. We got Dirty Deeds in the comments. A&G Best Hockey Podcast out there. Let's get to biz. Appreciate you. Armin's in here. What up? Devin, let's go. Nate. Armin says, gonna win my leagues thanks to Zero G. You and me both. That's what I can say about that. Let's not waste any time. Let's dive right in. Top of the list, Noah Dobson. Most requested player in the Apples and Genos Discord server this week. Just 2 assists in his last 5 games, 24.5 minutes average time on ice, still 14th in shots per 60, 27th individual scoring chances 4 per 60 amongst all defensemen in these last 5 games, 19th Corsi 4 per 60, 31st scoring chances 4 per 60. Been a disappointing season for sure for Dobson so far. 10 goal, 41 point pace. Third amongst all defensemen in shots per 60 on the season, 43% IPP, 3.9% shooting percentage, 8.9% on ice shooting percentage. And definitely this feels like a case where the regression came for Noah Dobson, but kind of overhit. I had Dobson projected for 12 goals and 60 points at the beginning of the year, 6.2% shooting percentage. So yeah, I think it would be fair to say from my perspective that the regression bat has swung a little bit too hard on Noah Dobson, and I think that there's a reasonable case to be made that Noah Dobson is a big-time buy low, and I've said as much a few times on this podcast. I'm still clinging to that. Honestly, like his underlying numbers have not really declined much, maybe for a few game stretch here or there, but overall he's been quite as advertised. And I mean, I've sent multiple offers for Noah Dobson in my leagues. I find it incredibly difficult to get deals done on the regular. I don't know if it's the curse of the hockey podcast or what it is, but yeah, I find it pretty tough to get deals done. Maybe I'm just always trying to win deals too big, but such is life, I guess. Like I had, if you go by my numbers in the preseason projections, I had him at a 10.9% on ice shooting percentage. So for him to be sitting halfway through the season at 8.9%, a full 2 percentage points lower than that. And what's that? That's if you're just going by relative percentage, that's an extra. Yeah, it's not a full 25%, but it's like close to 20%. Extra goals should have been scored while Noah Dobson was on the ice. Like if you just start to do the math on that and figure that out, and then I had his IPP at 52%, it's coming through at 43%, like just everything across the board. I projected much higher for Noah Dobson. I actually had him for less average time on ice. I had him for 23 minutes. He's been over 24. So realistically, this should have been a pretty solid season for Noah Dobson. We all know the struggles the Islanders have had, but if you look at, again, I think I talked about this too with relation to Matt Barzal, but if you look at the underlying numbers, what they've been doing over the last little bit, I think this is a team a lot of people are sleeping on because they've been pretty bad, but they have rounded into form, and I think the Islanders could rattle off some pretty big W's. 5th in the league in the last 2 weeks rather. 5 games played for them. 5th in the league in Corsi 4 per 60. It's been pretty good for them under the hood. At 585, this is with the score and venue adjusted unnatural stat trick that I'm looking at. So a bit of a long-winded way to say it, but Dobson keeps coming up because he has been kind of continually disappointing for much of the first half here, but I'm still trying to acquire him. I'll still continue to send offers. So that's where I'm at with Noah Dobson. Come back to the comments. Toronto Dave's in here. Hashtag 0G. Appreciate you. BBR dropped Lafreniere for a streamer last week. Mistake. It might have been, relatively speaking, not the best move, but I don't think like that one move is gonna like sink your season or anything. There's definitely worse things you could do than drop Lafreniere. The exciting potential of Lafreniere is if he ever gets top power play in New York, they figure things out just a little bit, or at least Panarin starts really doing well and kind of carrying the team again offensively, and Lafreniere is both on Panarin's line and on the top power play. That would be the bull case for Lafreniere. They've obviously talked about a lot of different potential trades, moving out one of the core pieces there that might open up a spot. I still don't know how likely that is, but that would be the ultimate dream scenario for Lafreniere. Even in that case, I don't think dropping him would absolutely sink you. Armin asks, would you drop Drouin for either of Jones, Taves, Matheson, or Fowler/Falk? Standard cats with hits and plus minus. Be my fifth out of a 40. Some days I bench forwards and have room on D slots. I think you can. The plus minus obviously hurts Seth Jones. Otherwise, he would probably be the top pick there. I don't hate the St. Louis options there. St. Louis has been playing like a completely different team under Jim Montgomery. You talk about teams with good underlying stats, going by the same 5v5 score and venue adjusted stats. St. Louis over the last 2 weeks, fourth in Corsi 4/60, and fourth in scoring chances 4/60, and good as well in terms of the percentage. Fifth in both of those. So they're really doing the thing at even strength. So I think that obviously means good things potentially for both Fowler and Falk. They have been splitting their lines, which is kind of the one thing that kind of gives you some pause. You generally for fantasy, we want there to be just a true top line power play that we can just pick the guy off of and go with it. And they've been kind of splitting it down the middle. Buchnevich, Thomas on one, Kyrou, Shen, Holloway, Neighbors on another. So I think either are fine. Falk, I guess, hits a little bit more, so maybe you want to go that route. But yeah, otherwise I would say Jones, but the plus minus is kind of scary there. Taves could give you the plus minus, but won't give you the hits, so that would be another option. I might be interested to try Falk and see if he can't get hot. I had a pretty solid projection on Justin Falk. I drafted him in a fair number of spots. I still believe there's a player in there, but obviously it hasn't gone his way so far this year. GB13, would you rather Lane Hudson versus Shane Gostisbehere? Gives the scoring here. It's fairly standard stuff, fairly light peripherals, except for blocks is a little bit heavier. Playoffs weeks 23 through 25. I think it's pretty even. Hudson versus Gostisbehere. I don't have a strong lean in either direction there, I don't think. So, I guess I might go. Yeah, you could just go by the playoff schedules here for sure. So Carolina, 12 games played in 6 off nights in weeks 23 through 25. And Montreal has 1 extra game played with the same amount of off nights. So you could just lean Hudson for the extra games played in the playoffs. Yeah, I tend to think it's not going to matter, but I think I would lean Hudson at this point. Derek Sorensen, thoughts on Jake Wallman now that he's back? Yeah, I think that the most likely scenario, and I haven't actually seen, I was going to look for this. I haven't actually seen, did he go back on the top power play? What do we have from Jake Wallman here? Jake Wallman directly back on top power play. Good stuff. Yep. So, yeah, I think he was definitely on an extreme pace. We could put in Jake Wallman so we could take a look at the actual numbers instead of me just talking about imaginary things. Obviously, he doesn't have much to show here, but is it not going to give me Jake Wallman? My sheet's broken. Either way, Jake Wallman was on a crazy pace. That was definitely going to regress, and perhaps the regression all hit while he was off, and now he's going to just pick up where he left off. I don't know. But definitely I think that should be rostered in most 12-team, even 10-team leagues probably. He should be rostered. He went straight back to power play 1. He's probably going to get some good minutes there. Yeah, definitely think that he's going to be valuable. Probably like a third fantasy defenseman on most teams on average. I don't think he's like a top tier or even a second tier guy necessarily, but a third tier guy for sure. Definitely makes sense for Jake Wallman. Armin, New York Rangers has the worst playoff schedule. Chillin' fam, no regrets. In relation to Lafreniere. Armin says no blocks in that league with Druin. Yeah, that wouldn't have swayed me with those particular set of defensemen, but yeah. Drewski finally dropped Morgan Riley and Kakuffel. I'm in desperation mode. Yeah, it's hard to live with the on again, off again nature there. I still tend to think that Riley will get his and probably be worth a spot. Kakuffel's 14 teams for most people and everybody but tier one. But I tend to think he's at least worth the roster spot. But yeah, it's been tough this year for sure. GB says, thanks, no problem. Armin says, appreciate you. Would you trade Schmaltz for Fowler in Kakuffel if you could use another solid D over a forward? No, I don't think I would. I think most likely Fowler. We can throw him in here since Jake Wallman's not doing anything other than taking up space there. I just don't know that Fowler's going to be useful beyond this like hot stretch that he's really started off with here in St. Louis. Like he might be serviceable, but I think Schmaltz should be a tick above serviceable. So I think you're losing that deal. I feel like there's probably a better deal to be made in my mind. Derek says, thanks, no problem. DJ Barzal or Rust rest of season, Roto League, goals, assists, PIMs, power play points, shots on goal, hits, blocks. That's a good question. I think Barzal's got more points upside, but Rust might fill out some categories for you a little bit more. So that's definitely a consideration. I might go Rust just given your categories. Barzal, obviously not much of a hitter, blocker, penalty minute guy. Doesn't do much of that. Rust does a little bit there. I guess it depends if you're really chasing just pure assists, pure power play points, then maybe you go Barzal. If those are like the two categories you're behind in and you want to catch up in, then maybe you go Barzal. If you want just a more well-rounded player, then maybe Rust. That's an interesting one though, specifically for a Roto League. Devin loves that question and asks, who has been more disappointing this season, Dobson or Heiskanen? Yeah, definitely those two pretty high up the list in terms of disappointing defensemen on the season. All right, let's get back to the list. Joel Eriksson Ek, 2 goals in his last 5 games, 18.5 minutes average time on ice, 66 shots per 60, 94th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60 in the 200s in the on-ice numbers, which is not so hot. In the last game, he was skating with Marcus Foligno and Yakov Trenin. It's not what you want to see. He was still on the top power play. I did see a tweet, and I'm going to try to find this back, actually. Let me see if I can find this back. Eriksson Ek. I think it was Russo who tweeted this. Let me see if I can find this back real quick. He was talking about something. Eriksson Ek already dealing with lower body issues, so to the bench after Rantanen fell on him. That was earlier. I'm just trying to find back. I think there's another tweet after that, but basically saying that Joel Eriksson Ek is not healthy, like he's playing through something right now, which is, it's concerning. There's no two ways about that. I still think that Joel Eriksson Ek is going to be pretty valuable, and especially if you're looking at somebody to target for your playoff stretch, then that should be better. And also a guy who should be better when Cap's back in the lineup, as should pretty much everybody in Minnesota, with the possible exception of Marco Rossi. That's kind of where I'm at. I think that maybe Joel Eriksson Ek isn't going to just suddenly bounce back to be like where I thought he could be in terms of the projection at the beginning of the season. My projection at the beginning of the season was a 30-goal, 67-point pace. I don't think he's going to get back to that level the way he's playing currently. But I do think that he should see a bump when Cap is back. Even if he's not playing with Cap at even strength, the power play alone should bump him up there, in my opinion. So that would be something there where I still think that Eriksson Ek represents a pretty solid buy low at the moment. Kevin Fiala showing up on this list a lot this year. 1 goal in his last 5. just over 19 and a half minutes. Blake and I talked about Fiala on the flagship show, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here. Basically, I'm blaming a lot of this on Fiala's line mates this year. I think he's actually been pretty good. You see the season long numbers: 51st in shots per 60, 63rd individual scoring chances for per 60, big minutes the last little bit. It's a 65% IPP, 13.1% shooting percentage. That feels in line. 8.1% on ice shooting percentage, though, is a pretty significant step back. I had him at a 12.45 on ice shooting percentage in my projections, the way they came out. Even if you just kind of knock that back by like a full percentage point, like you're still talking about a huge chunk of points that should have been scored, or goals that should have been scored while he's on the ice, that he could be getting a percentage of. Yeah, I think that your baseline expectation should be a 70-point Fiala rest of the season. Everything seems to be there under the hood, except his teammates are just not finishing. To some extent, I do question, the ability of Philip Deneau and Alex Laferriere, his most common line mates, to be consistent finishers for him. And that part is concerning if these are just the lines that LA is going to kind of roll with the rest of the year. I don't know how likely that is to continue or how much it's likely to change. There could be injuries, there could be lots of stuff that could change some things here. But what I do know is I believe that Kevin Fiala is too good for this to last, this point pace to last. I don't really buy into like second half Fiala, the whole narrative. It's a fun thing to talk about, but I don't really think it's a real phenomenon at all. Yeah, there's just way too many variables at play. If you actually look at his splits, it's not really as pronounced as you think it is. There were like 2 seasons in a row where it was a thing where it was that pronounced, and then every other season I don't think it's nearly as pronounced. So maybe this year he'll do it again, and then we'll talk about it again. But overall, I just think that Kevin Fiala is due some teammate luck basically here, and that should mean much more point scoring coming to him. Whereas I thought he could be a point per game player this year, I think of him now more in that 70-point range, but definitely a player capable of getting really hot really fast and sustaining it for a while. Lots of talent under the hood here with Kevin Fiala. Jason Robertson, another player who kind of fits that bill as well. He's got 2 goals, 5 points in his last 5, just over 18 minutes, average time on ice. Good stuff from Jason Robertson. Finally getting something done here when a lot of fantasy managers had been decrying the state of their Jason Robertson shares for sure. But I think there is still some case where I'm still left wanting a little bit more here from Robertson. Like, even to get to the 68-point pace that he's on, he needed an 83% IPP. It's really the 9.6% on ice shooting percentage that's held him down relative to where I had him projected. I had him projected for 12.6% on ice shooting percentage. I still think he can get close to that. And he should shoot for a higher percentage than 10.4 individually, but definitely the minutes are not quite as good as we had hoped for. Even with the injuries they've sustained, he's not like pushing. You'd hope with the kind of injuries they sustained to the forward core that he'd start pushing 19 plus, and that's not being the case. He's never really taken off in terms of the shot production. As we had hoped. It's been good, but never like elite at any one point throughout the season. 91st in shots per 60 over the last 5 here. So yeah, I'm just kind of muting my expectations for Robertson. I had him projected for 89.5 points at the start of the season. Now I'm more in the point per game player rest of season kind of range. And even that feels like it might be a little bit on the higher end of outcomes rather than right in the middle. So yeah, adjusting expectations on Robertson. Haven't really changed on that take for maybe the last month or so. So I think that's probably where I'm going to land on him for the rest of the season. Should be roughly a point per game player. Let's go back to the comments. Jordan, hey Nate, would you trade Dougie for Dobson? Also thoughts on Raquel rest of season. How would you rank him versus RNH and Hurdle rest of season standard Yahoo Points League? So let's talk about Dougie versus Dobson. This is an interesting question. Dougie Hamilton, not getting the minutes, but the underlying stats are terrific. Just under 19 minutes average time on ice, which is concerning for sure. Still a 51-point pace. You see how elite the underlying numbers are for Dougie Hamilton. He's definitely gotten unlucky. 39% IPP, 3.7% shooting percentage. He should be doing better on those marks. So I think that Dougie Hamilton, as long as he's on power play one, is still probably a little better than Noah Dobson, just because of how good that Devils power play is and Dougie Hamilton's exposure to it. But the caveat being that if Hamilton ever came off that top power play, then immediately Dobson would be a better fantasy asset, almost certainly, for the rest of the season. So you kind of have to weigh your risk and reward there. If you're just kind of looking to lock something in rest of season, Dobson should probably be a little more steady, but Hamilton probably has the greater upside. For Raquel rest of season, how would I rank him versus RNH and Hurdle? We could throw all three in here and do a little would you rather. Ryan Nugent Hopkins, that's a fun one to type out live, and Thomas Hurdle is the other one. All of them doing stuff the last little bit. Raquel's got 6 points his last 5. RNH has 4. Hurdle has 4. Hurdle has really nice underlying numbers the last little bit. It's been coming up. Most minutes goes to Raquel, almost 21, which is nice. And Hurdle and RNH are around 18.5. Overall, like Raquel is definitely overperforming. 19.8% shooting percentage is crazy. It's gonna come down, but he's also just getting ridiculous minutes, and so it's a fair question to ask by how much it comes down, and will he still be more valuable than Nugent Hopkins as a result? I tend to think that Nugent Hopkins and Hurdle both have a chance to outperform Raquel. Like Raquel could really fall off the entire map because this is like just totally dependent on exposure to Crosby at even strength and on the power play. As long as that's there, then I like Raquel, but as that's the risk you're running with Raquel, is that he is so dependent on that exposure. So I guess it kind of depends, right? How much you believe in that. What's Raquel's contract situation? He doesn't expire until the 2027-28 season, 5-year. Yeah, he's going to be a little bit tough for them to move unless they pick up a good chunk of that contract. Interesting stuff. The fear would be that Raquel gets moved and is just like a middle six winger all of a sudden on a contending team, and he's like basically a drop instantly as soon as he's traded. That would be the fear with Raquel, right? Yeah, I think it's a similar scenario where I think Raquel in his current state is probably better than RNH and Hurdle, but if you're looking for the most likely to provide something of value for the rest of season, the most steady, consistent contributor, I'd probably go with RNH. Hurdle, to me, is just getting bounced around the lineup a little bit too much. Like the wingers are not consistent. If you told me he was just going to play with Pavel Dorofeyev for the rest of the season, I might sign up for that. But if you're not going to be able to give me that assurance, then I think I would still go RNH over Hurdle. So it's really a Raquel versus RNH question. And again, it's a little bit of a how much do you think that Raquel is in Pittsburgh for the rest of the season and is attached to Crosby rest of the season? That's what you should be thinking about. Armin, last Q, rest of season outlook for Cousins, Neighbors, Olofsson need to drop 2 of them. Standard Cats with blocks, hits, and plus minus. Neighbors has been tough. Olofsson is, again, a player totally dependent on deployment, needs to have power play 1, needs to have some exposure to good players. I guess let's throw him in and take a look here. Jake Neighbors, Victor Olofsson, and Dylan Cousins. Cousins has been getting some interesting deployment. They were looking at him on that line with Tage Thompson. I guess Thompson is working through something, and so Cousins has been centering that line so that Thompson doesn't have to take faceoffs. And so obviously, like more Tage Thompson exposure never going to be a bad thing. The problem is Dylan Cousins is also on power play 2, not power play 1. And that's going to hold down his value offensively pretty clearly. Victor Olofsson is interesting. But as I mentioned, he really does need that power play exposure, that basically that Jack Eichel exposure, right? That's what everybody in Vegas wants. They kind of used Dorofiev on the top power play over Olofsson, even with Eichel out, and that's obviously got to give you some pause as to his viability moving forward. Olofsson is just going to be such an erratic player. Just when he's in those spots, yes, he can contribute. When he's not in those spots, he's absolutely not going to contribute anything of value. Jake Neighbors has been a little bit disappointing for me, honestly, this year. Um, as I click on the wrong thing and everything goes away on my screen. Uh, yeah, Neighbors has been pretty disappointing. Under 15 minutes average time on ice the last little bit. That being said, this is a guy who hits and will do that kind of stuff for you, so there is that. I think you're right to be questioning between all of these players. I think if you had to ask me today, I think I would go. Ooh, I think I would take Dylan Cousins and drop the other two, but um, yeah, I could change my mind pretty quickly. I think it's a very, very close, very, very close question. Tinkley Winkley, man, there was once a goalie, Levi Merlainen, whose starts had the Senators a line in. 2 games back to back, he showed decent knack. Is his workload a trend worth enshrining? Very nice. Very nice. Um, I mean, one of the hallmarks of zero G, right, is we'll take anybody who's performing at the moment. I like what Marilinen is bringing at the moment. You can definitely take a look. Like the Senators absolutely need someone to do something, so they're gonna ride with it. The the Senators have 4 games this week, so you're gonna get at least 2 starts out of Marilinen this week, if not 3. That part is interesting. The part that's not so interesting is that they're going to play the Islanders, the Capitals, the Bruins, and the Devils. All teams that are generating a decent amount of scoring at the moment. I guess the Bruins obviously a little bit of the odd man out in terms of that, but yeah, it's a good spot in terms of volume, and obviously he's performed pretty well to this point, and I'm willing to take a stab on goalies like that, but do be aware that it is a bit of a murderer's row in terms of teams to be facing this week. And yeah, like it's hard to say the Senators as a team in front of him have really figured things out, and so he is going to have to be really good to continue to provide really good outcomes. And it's fair to question whether he's capable of doing that. But in terms of pure volume, I don't mind that play. Swoosh, Konechny versus Tage Thompson, rest of the season, no hits. I'm going to take Tage Thompson there. Talked about Travis Konechny and how I think he's going to regress, especially if you're in a playoff position. Buffalo just has that playoff schedule, and so I'm going to kind of lean into that. The only thing that really gives me pause there is the injury that they're talking about with Tage Thompson, that he is playing through something, and does that start to affect him? So far, it hasn't really shown up in the numbers too much. So that's kind of giving me some peace of mind, I guess, about Tage Thompson and keeping him ranked this highly versus other players who are absolutely on fire. But yeah, that's what I'll say as of now. Also, what do you think of Svechnikov rest of the season? Svechnikov, I think you just have to get used to the fact that he plays for Rod Brindamore. And so, like, he's going to have great underlying stats a lot of the time. 69th individual scoring chances for per 60, which is nice. 5 points in his last 5 games, which is nice, but under 17 minutes a night, which means that it's going to be really tough for him to sustain production for long periods of time. That's where I'm at with Svechnikov. I just think that he's probably going to do better than the 60-point pace, but is he really going to pop off and go point per game pace rest of the season? I don't think so, unless all of a sudden Brindamore totally changes his mind and plays Svechnikov 19 minutes a night. I just don't see that in the cards, and so I think Svech is just going to be a little bit muted, the way that he kind of has been throughout his entire career so far in Carolina. That's just the way it is. So that's where I'm at with Svech. Bangers, Cats, thoughts on Stamkos rest of season? Let's throw Steven Stamkos in here. 3 points in his last 17 minutes. The minutes have really gone down, and the individual stats are in the 300s, which is horrific. That's the part that has me a bit concerned. And there was something about him. Was it just an illness? I got to look this up now. Stamkos. There was some talk about him potentially missing a game. Am I just totally making this up? No, I can't find any tweets about it. Am I just totally making up that Stamkos was close to missing a game one time? Maybe. But yeah, I had some concern based on something rattling around in my brain that there might have been some underlying issue that they were worried about. What's really concerning, regardless of all of that, is the just absolute lack of individual scoring chances. He's being asked to play center, which is not like his best position at this point in his career, in my opinion, for whatever that's worth. Uh, yeah, the power play time is there, but the power play is not really working for them right now. And so, do I think he's going to do better than the 49-point pace that he's on? Yeah, he probably should be, but how much better is a legitimate question at this point, especially if he's not being able to generate anything individually from the center position. So that's my biggest issue right now. So what could I give as some sort of estimate moving forward? Yeah, 60-point Stamkos moving forward, like 30 goals, 60-point Stamkos as a pace rest of season. Might be in that range. That might be where I'm at. But yeah, really concerning at the moment with the underlying numbers for sure. All right, back to the list. We got through to, where did we get to? Jason Robertson. Let's go Jared McCann, also a popular topic of conversation here. 4 assists in his last 5, 17 minutes average time on ice. Underlying numbers have really fallen off with McCann. I've talked about this a little bit because he's been a popular player to talk about in a lot of our different stuff. Playing with Wright and Tolvanen at even strength doesn't seem to be really working, but not a lot of lines seem to be working aside from the Schwartz, Beniers, Kakko line. So yeah, that is concerning for him. The underlying numbers: 269 shots per 60, 308 individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 314 on ice Corsi, 4 per 60, 371 on ice scoring chances, 4 per 60. Really falling off a cliff there. I really like McCann as a player. I think he can be super efficient even when he's not being effective and generating a lot. You see he has 4 assists in his last 5 games, even with these really bad underlying numbers. So I think McCann is still a player that I'm not dropping, but it is concerning at this point how long it's gone on for, that he just can't seem to score, can't seem to generate. It's definitely at a concerning level, I would say now, rather than before where I was like, absolutely, you're not like even thinking about dropping Jared McCann or doing anything with him. I'm at least now concerned. Next up, Alex Tuch, 2 goals, 3 points, his last 5, over 18 minutes average time on ice. Nice to see his average time on ice coming back up a little bit where it had been going in the wrong direction before. And 223rd in shots per 60, not so nice, but 32nd in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60 is pretty nice. The on-ice numbers, definitely not too great. It's a 27-goal, 59-point pace on the season for Tuch at this point. The problem is that he has not sniffed power play 1 for, it feels like years at this point, but realistically, it's only been a number of months. He's on a line with JJ Peterka, which is all right, but Ryan McLeod in the middle, which is not all right. I don't know why they can't let Alex Tuch be on a top power play, but as long as he's not on the top power play, I don't think he's much more than this guy, 25 to 30 goal, 60-point player. Yeah, that's pretty much who Alex Tuch is. Still valuable in terms of playoff schedule. I'm talking about Buffalo with that great playoff schedule. So there is that keeps me hanging on to Alex Tuch in the place that I have him. But yeah, he's definitely going to be a step back from where I thought he could be, which was a 70-point plus player at the beginning of the season. Tage Thompson, 4 points his last 5, 21 plus minutes average time on ice, and 3rd in shots per 60. Yeah, still generating a ton of shots, which we like to see. Unfortunately, he's kind of the only guy that's doing that for the Sabres at the moment. So, yeah, underlying injury notwithstanding, Tage Thompson is still doing the thing and still getting a ridiculous amount of minutes. He caught some praise, I saw, as well in one of the recent games. That he's doing things the right way or something. I forget what the quote is exactly, but yeah, I think that's a good sign, and the minutes are there to back it up. So another reason that I'm pretty optimistic, even with some reports of an underlying injury with Tage Thompson, that Tage can keep this thing going and be a force for us in the fantasy playoffs. Patrick Kane, 3 goals, 10 points in his last five. Maybe the hottest player in the league right now. Just over 17 and a half minutes average time on ice, 40th shots per 60, 29th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 39th in on ice Corsi, 4 per 60, or scoring chances, 4 per 60. Now all the way up to a 22 goal, 60 point pace. It would be nice to see him get a little bit more time on ice and push him over that 18-minute mark, but it's hard to complain with what you're getting out of Patrick Kane at the moment. If he doesn't get any more minutes, then I think it will be hard for him to get much more effective than this kind of level that he's at right now. You see that on ice shooting percentage at 12.9%. Hard to envision that getting much higher in terms of a season long number. 64% IPP could go higher. Kane does sustain higher IPPs, has often throughout his career. Maybe he's just not quite that guy anymore at this stage of his career, but wouldn't shock you to see him at 70% when all is said and done either. So, 60 to 65 point Patrick Kane rest of season feels like a really good bet. Obviously, the Red Wings in general are playing the best hockey of their season under new coach Todd McClellan. Things are really working there. Philip Hronek, sounds like he's going to be a game time decision for Vancouver's game on Tuesday. So that's going to be a good thing for him to be back. Do I think that he's going to make an immediate impact for fantasy? No. Like he goes into that, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, probably less than Devin Taves kind of tier, somewhere below that. It's nice. I think it'll be a positive thing for Vancouver in general. Like that should help pretty much everybody in Vancouver be more effective and lead to some more general offense for the team. So that part I'm excited about, but I'm excited about the individual player, Philip Hronek, not so much. He's probably not that guy. He might get hot for a stretch here or there, might be a good streamer, but definitely more of a fifth defenseman than a fourth/fifth defenseman for fantasy purposes. Timo Meier is next on the list. Also a guy that keeps coming up week after week. 1 assist in his last 5, 18 and a half minutes average time on ice. Decent minutes. 127 shots per 60, 92nd individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. I'm going to keep banging the same drum with Timo Meier. He's on a 26 goal, 54 point pace. I think he can maybe do slightly better than that, but you're probably talking about a guy who's a 25 to 30 goal scorer, 55 to 60 point pace on the season, as long as he's in this current role that he's in. If he ever gets power play 1, though, that's where you could really see a big boost with how effective that top power play is in New Jersey. And so I have Timo Meier in one spot. I'm not going to move off of him because if that does come true and he gets on the top power play, I could be looking at a guy who is a league winner. He's still shooting and hitting and doing those things that help us for fantasy. So it kind of is what it is. He's going to go through these stretches where he runs cold, and then he's going to go through some hot stretches just by virtue of being a second line, second power play dude. But if he ever gets a run on the top power play unit for whatever reason, that's when we could see some fireworks, and that's when he could actually win you some weeks and potentially win you some championships. Mikael Granlund, 2 assists his last 5, still 21 and a half minutes average time on ice. Underlying numbers are not good. 285th shots per 60, 275th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 266 on ice Corsi, 4 per 60, 181 on ice scoring chances, 4 per 60. Yeah, I mean, it's Mikael Granlund. He's now on a 21 goal, 69 point pace. Nice. 71% IPP, 10% shooting percentage, 10.3% on ice shooting percentage. Yeah, he probably is this guy for now. The question is, will he get moved at the trade deadline? If he does, he immediately probably becomes a middle six winger for wherever team he goes to. I mean, maybe he could play center, like the Leafs are interested in some third line center, it sounds like. So maybe Granlund fits something like that for them. I could see something like that happen, but obviously that would absolutely destroy any fantasy value he has. If you can sell Granlund, I would be desperately trying to do that right now because I do feel like he's a guy that feels really likely to get moved at the trade deadline, in my opinion. Go back to the comments here for a moment. Brock Nelson will be traded to Nashville. That would be interesting. I don't really know what the impetus would be there. I know like Nashville wants centers in general, but Nashville's out of the playoffs, so I don't know that that's the specific move they'd be looking to do unless, they just have like the right combination of players to make a player for player swap with the Islanders. I don't know if I see that one personally, but that'd be interesting for sure. Devin asked, do you see Kane getting so many power play points recently as any sign of regression? I think it's 7 out of his 13. I think this was like positive regression. I think he was pretty snake bit before, but yeah, like he's not going to score 2 points every game for the rest of the season for sure. Yeah, I think I went over it. I see him, 60 to 65 points as a rest of season pace. Steve says, Nate, you and Blake had a good combo about Sean Dursey worth a stash on IR Plus. Yeah, Blake has been on Dursey. Thought that he might get a chance over Sergachev on top power play. That didn't come true, but yeah, could be worth a stash for sure. Here are some guys in free agency right now. Anyone who you would stash: Kreider, Bunting, Roenick, Dursey, and Boone Jenner. Of those, have we gotten any Boone Jenner news as of late? I know he was like on the ice. I don't know what that really meant in terms of his potential to return to the ice. I just typed Jenner into the Twitter search bar, expecting that to come up with Boone Jenner. Uh, yeah. Oh, we just actually got a tweet. This is good stuff. Boone Jenner is ahead of schedule. If all goes well, he could return right after the Four Nations break. So that's good stuff. I like Boone Jenner. I guess Sean Monahan's probably also going to return before that. It says in the same tweet, actually, Sean Monahan will wear his brace for 2 weeks, then say where things go to go. Not day to day, but not long term either. So yeah, they could both come back after the Four Nations break, and that wouldn't be too surprising. But yeah, I think there's room for Boone Jenner in Columbus to get a spot. Does he get a top power play spot is definitely the biggest question there. Chris Kreider, I would like if you could assure me that, he's going to be out until he's totally better. I just don't think that's what's going to happen there. In terms of upside, I guess Kreider probably has the most upside still, but I like Jenner as well. It would be one of those two for me. Jordan says, hey, Nate, I'm new to fantasy, so not sure if this is a dumb question, but with these league settings, is Sherwood more valuable than McCann rest of season? Goals are worth 6, assists 4, power play points, shorthanded points worth 2, shots on goal, hits, blocks worth 0.5. So the way I like to look at this is I kind of relate everything back to goals. So an assist is generally worth 2/3 of a goal, which is what you've got here. Anything more than that, then assists are heavily weighted. Anything less than that, and assists are not so heavily weighted. So that's kind of right on par there. Then in terms of the peripherals, I generally look and see is it 1/10, like 10% of what a goal is worth. And you have 0.5 here versus 6 for a goal. So it's a little bit less than what I would say is like a baseline average or median level of peripheral weight here. So all things together here, I think they're comparable in your settings. Sherwood just generates such a ridiculous amount of hits that I think it's at least comparable. That being said, I think I'd bet on McCann. I think the highs are going to be higher because he can have those 2, 3, 4 goal games, and theoretically should get those games much more often than a guy like Sherwood. Clixie, could you take a look at Boeser's stats if he's not on the list? Is he worth holding on to in a 12-team points league? You can absolutely add Brock Boeser to the list and take a quick peek. 2 points his last 5, just over 18 minutes. Underlying stats not so hot. 281st shots per 60, 319. Individual scoring chances 4 per 60, 189. Corsi 4 per 60, 192. On ice scoring chances 4 per 60. That is a little rough for Brock Boeser. What's the pace on the season? 35 goals, 63-point pace on the season. That comes with a 22% shooting percentage and a 14.3% on ice shooting percentage. Yeah, it's kind of curious for sure. You got to wonder how much of this is tied to, JT Miller has looked a little bit better as of late, but hasn't been the consistent line mate that he was all of last season for Brock Boeser. I guess I would say that I don't think Brock Boeser is a must hold, but I would be trying to hold him unless there was something pretty exciting out there in terms of the waiver wire. That being said, like if he's the next guy up, like if everybody on your team is like pretty conclusively better than Brock Boeser's 63-point pace right now, then if he's the next guy up and you need to make some streaming room, then I wouldn't be shocked if you had to drop him. But ideally, I think you're probably still hanging on to Boeser in most places in 12-teamers. Chinikov worth a stash in 12 team. Yeah, I don't mind that. Obviously, he had a run where he was pretty hot. We've seen Voronkov get hot in a similar spot, so you have to wonder how much of it was the spot and how much of it was the player. But good underlying numbers when he was there, so worth the stash for sure. CG is Jenner worth stashing. I think so. If you got the spot and you got the ad, and it's not that ad is not going to help you in your current matchup this week, and you just kind of have a free ad at some point, then I don't mind it. But I'm not like, I wouldn't say I'm making a point to go out and add Jenner over making an impact in my current matchup. Prediction on how and where Lindholm return will play out on the Boston blue line. Yeah, this is an interesting one because Lindholm did have power play time as well. That's what I'm really interested to see. Lowry has obviously gotten some power play looks with Lindholm out. Yeah, I think it's at least a question if Lindholm comes back. Maybe not the first game, but does he work himself back into some power play time, potentially power play 1 time? So I think that is something that I do have my eye on. Best rest of season 12 team, Rust, Drouin, Fiala. I think the most bankable is probably Rust. I think Fiala maybe has the most upside. Drouin, I think, will be up and down. He might have the best individual weeks whenever he's on line 1, power play 1, but he'll probably also get moved off of that in other weeks, and you'll probably drop him in between. So that's what I think of those 3. Frank says Bennett and Granlund were just dropped. Are they better options for the second half over Zetterlund, Buchnevich, Zibanejad, or Foegele? Yeah, I'd take Bennett over Zetterlund and Foegele for sure. Would I take Granlund? I would probably still take Granlund over Zetterlund unless you have big time bangers wait. And I think I would take Granlund over Foegele as well. So yeah, definitely not over Buchnevich or Zibanejad though. Who'd you rather, Kreider or Svech? Definitely Svech. Hey Nate, would you do RNH or Nichushkin in a Cats League rest of season? Goals, assists, power play points, shots on goals, short-handed points, game-winning goals, and hits. So Nichushkin, it came out today now that it sounds like he's actually a little bit further away than they thought, maybe like even up to like 2 weeks away. So yeah, that's a little bit of a shock. It seemed like they were kind of clearing a path. They moved some guys back to the AHL. It seemed like they were clearing a path for Nichushkin to potentially return here on Tuesday. But it sounds like that's not in the cards anymore. Nichushkin will miss a fair bit of time, a week or 2. But I still think if you can stomach the IR spot, like maybe you don't even have to make this calculation because Nichushkin is going to stay on your IR plus or something. But I think I'd rather have Nichushkin. I still think that RNH should get back to it at some point, but until he does, it's really hard to trust. CG says, thanks, Nate. Best content out there. Appreciate you. If you're appreciating what I'm doing here, if you could throw a like on the live stream as we go, would really appreciate that. Let's get back to the list. Mikhail Granlund we talked about, so let's move on. Matvei Michkov, 1 goal in his last 5 games, 15.5 minutes average time on ice, 14th in shots per 60 in this span, 85th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 46th in Corsi, 4 per 60. I think this is kind of what we foresaw a little bit with Michkov. Terrifically talented player. Has he got anything in this game that's ongoing? Hathaway scored. I don't think he was playing with Hathaway, so I don't think there's anything there. No. 26 goals, 60-point pace on the season. Yeah, that feels about right. What did I have him projected for, actually? Let's go check that out for a moment. I feel like it wasn't that far off that number. I think I was a little bit lower, maybe. Michkov, 23 goal, 53-point pace. Yeah, so I was a little bit lower there. And he's proven to be even better than that. But in terms of the minutes, I think I've been pretty close there. I'm projecting what Tortorella might do with a guy like this. Yeah, overall, I think the future is super bright for Matvei Michkov. I think he can be a point per game plus star in the league. Do I think that comes true this year at any point? Not so much. It still plays for John Tortorella, and he hasn't entered the Travis Konechny circle of trust yet. So, yeah, I think the 26 goal, 60-point pace that he's on currently is probably what you should relatively expect for the rest of the year. But totally, you should also expect that it's going to come with a lot of ups and downs along the way. Potential benchings, 10-minute games, and then some other times where he's got 6 points in 5 games, and you're like, oh, he's going to do the thing for the rest of the year, and then the roller coaster ride will continue. That's my expectation for Michkov rest of season. Tom Wilson, 4 goals, 5 points. His last 5 over 20.5 minutes, average time on ice. Great stuff for Wilson rosters. I actually had a pretty solid projection. I went back and looked at it not that long ago. They went with McMichael, Strome, Wilson as the line in the last game. Interesting look there. And then what was the... Sorry, I think this is the new lines as of today. Sorry, yeah. So different lines as of today in practice. Sorry, it wasn't the last game, but the new lines today in practice: McMichael, Strome, Wilson. Has been on the top power play still with Strome, Ovechkin, Carlson, Chychrun, and been pretty much a staple there this entire season. And he's on a 36-goal, 63-point pace. He's definitely been running hot to get there. But yeah, like I think 25 to 30 goal, 55-point pace rest of season, definitely within reach, especially when he's getting these kinds of minutes. Yeah, I don't hate that at all for Tom Wilson, and obviously he's bringing the banks to boot. So, yeah, I don't think you have to be super worried that it's just going to the bottom's going to completely fall out with Tom Wilson, at least while this deployment sticks around. Do I think it's going to be quite this good rest of season? No, but still should be quite good and very rosterable in fantasy. JT Miller, 2 goals, 4 points, his last 5, under 18 minutes average time on ice is a little bit scary. I don't know, maybe I should double check this for a minute to see if there are any individual games that were kind of skewing those minutes. Sometimes I look at the average time on ice and then I'll go back and look at it later and I'll be like, oh, of course, because he, got injured for a little bit or had a misconduct or something. So yeah, I was just in the last game. He only played 13:22, and I don't really know. That was in the Toronto game. I don't recall them talking about any kind of injury or anything there or missing any time. Either way, the underlying number is not bad. 45th shots per 60, 40th individual scoring chances 4 per 60, 88th Corsi 4 per 60, 121 on a scoring chances 4 per 60, 20 goals, 74-point pace. Yeah, I think he can be a little better, but it's really the situation in Vancouver, right? I talked about Hronek coming back. Is that enough to stabilize what's going on in Vancouver? It was a nice win against Toronto for them for sure. That's got to feel good for them, but they're going to have to continue to build on that to, put the questions to rest from the media there, which for whatever reason seems to really affect not only the players but the front office. Like, yeah, it's an odd situation for sure. I'm worried about JT Miller the same as everybody else. I think you have to expect different rest of season results than what you were hoping for with JT Miller this year. I think that ship has sailed, that he could be, at what he was last year for sure, but even I definitely had him projected for some regression this year, but I definitely thought he could be better than this. I had him for 31 goal, 92-point pace. So yeah, definitely that's not going to hit either. I do think he can be a point per game player, but the average ice time has to stay up. Yes, this one last game is the major reason why it looks so low here. But even then, he's got a 15:41 game in the not so distant past. He's got some games in this 15-minute range, and those are just games that he doesn't usually have and has now, and that will inevitably kind of hold down his ceiling. So yeah, much more in like the 75 to 80 point range, JT Miller rest of season in my mind. Let's get back to the comments. CG rest of season, Druin or Lecky. I'll go Druin there. It just seems like he gets more opportunities with McKinnon, and that's where you want to be. Like and subscribe, everybody. Appreciate that. Frank, which D should I covet if I were to consider trading Reinhart? I'd go high. I'd try for Yossi. I don't know how many D I would go for over Reinhart. Reinhart, like, terrific player, second round draft pick if we redraft today. Yeah, it would have to be somebody Yossi tier. Werenski, I don't think you're getting, but yeah, Werenski would be up in that range. Yeah, something in that range. Has to be an absolute elite defenseman for sure. Jordan says, thanks, no problem. All right, we're coming towards the end of the list here. Marco Rossi, 5 points his last 5 games. Let's pair him up here with Matt Boldy, who has 3 goals and 6 points in his last 5, both playing 20 minutes a night. Boldy's got way better underlying stats, as he usually does. 42nd in shots per 60, 10th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. He has definitely turned a corner in terms of the underlying stats and is getting some results again to boot. Good to see there in advance of Kaprizov coming back. Hopefully Kaprizov is back here this week for the Minnesota Wild. Overall, Rossi I have concern about. I've been saying this for a while. Does he maintain power play 1 once Kaprizov is back? I think that's a real question. Maybe they run some sort of 5-forward power play. That wouldn't be the craziest thing either. But that is the major question with Rossi. Does he A, play with Cap at even strength, and B, play with Cap on the top power play? I think his role is the least secure of all the top forwards there in Minnesota. So that's my concern with Rossi. Otherwise, he's definitely been too efficient to get to the 71-point pace so far. 19.8% shooting percentage, probably pretty high, but hard to ignore what he's done so far in the year, and pretty happy that I called him out as a sleeper at the beginning of the year. Matt Boldy, I think, is just doing Matt Boldy things. Right now it's a 30-goal, 69-point pace on the season. Nice. I think he's got more to give there for sure, and I think we should see it once Cap is back. Shane Pinto, 2 goals, 3 points in his last 5, over 19 minutes average time on ice in the last 5. That's nice to see. 83rd in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60 is his best number. 221st in on-ice Corsi, 4 per 60 is his worst. Really, it's just about deployment with Pinto. I think there's a player here, but is he going to actually play with anybody where we care? That is the day-to-day, game-to-game question with Shane Pinto. The last game, he was there with Cousins and Grieg. That's not going to cut it. He's got to play with somebody better than that for him to be worth it for fantasy. So that is the day-to-day question with Shane Pinto. I think he's just a streamer at this point until we get a better situation there. Wyatt Johnston, 1 goal, 3 points his last 5, has gone a little bit colder again, had heated up. Over 19 minutes still, 164 shots per 60, 157 individual scoring chances, 4 per 60 in the 200s in the on-ice numbers, which is pretty shocking for him. What line has he been playing on? They did shuffle these around a little bit. It's still been Jamie Benn, Matt Duchene, Wyatt Johnston. I think that's a good spot for him. 19 goal, 58-point pace, 8.8% shooting percentage is just unbelievable for a guy who's been so efficient through his first 2 seasons in the league. I think we're going to get a massive discount on Wyatt Johnston next year if this keeps up for any length of time. But probably the better bet is that he absolutely goes off in the back half of the season here. I would love to get my hands on more Wyatt Johnston shares wherever I can. All right, we will close out with some comments and then we'll be done here. NRF, what about Timmy and Brady? Thought they didn't play well recently. We could throw them in. Oh, I'm going to have to get Stützle because I need the accent on his name. Tim Stützle. Here we go. Copy and paste that in. And then we can throw Brady in there as well. Yeah, minutes are down, which is not something you want to see for these guys. I would say these metrics are kind of in line. Brady's shots are a little bit down from where he normally is. He's first in the league in shots per 60 on the season. I mean, these paces that you're seeing, 27 goal, 84-point pace for Stützle, 35 goal, 74-point pace for Brady Tkachuk. If I'm looking across at their luck metrics, I'm not really seeing something here that I think is going to change a ton. Maybe the shooting percentage comes down for Stützle and he converts a few more goals into assists moving forward, but either way, the point pace I wouldn't change a whole lot as a projection. So I think it is a little bit what you see is what you get with these two. The time on ice being a little bit down the last little bit is the most concerning part of it, not really anything that I'm seeing under the hood. Master2896 asks, Fetch or Robertson? I will take Robertson there. Pasta for Yossi, looking for D in this Keep 3 league. Points league with D getting +2 on goals and assists. Goals worth 5 and assists worth 3. Initial thoughts. +2 is a good chunk there. That's that's a good chunk, but you are getting older as well. If it's an infinite keeper where, like there's no chance that this guy's going back into your pool, then it is tough to give up on Pasternak and get older with Yossi that way. Um, yeah, I don't think I can trade Pasternak. It's just so valuable. Yeah, I don't think I could do it personally. Final answer. Max 3 years. Um, yeah, that could change it. It's close. It's close enough. But I still think it's too tough for me to give up on Pasternak personally. Pasternak is like a top, I don't know, at least a top 8 fantasy player every single year. So, um, even in that scenario, I don't know that I can do it. I think I'd be trying to find a different way to do it that wasn't so high end, if that makes sense. I'd be trying to get a little bit better ND with um, some more like third and fourth tier defensemen rather than top tier. Could you take a look at Panarin? Panarin will be the last one we do here, and then I'm going to get out of here. He's got 6 points in his last 5. All but one are assists. 20 minutes, 100th in shots per 60, 125 individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 32nd on ice Corsi, 4 per 60, 105 on ice scoring chances, 4 per 60, 35 goal, 92 point pace now. Around 20 minutes, just under 20 minutes average time on ice on the season, 85% IPP. He does that. Yeah, I mean, it would be nice if his teammates were a little bit more efficient, but Panarin kind of feels like same old here. And it's nice to see him being, about as hot as he normally should be. 6 points every 5 is about the Panarin pace that we would expect. So I think it's kind of status quo, honestly, with Panarin. He's not going to come close to what he did last year. But that was kind of my baseline expectation anyway. I had him for a 112 point pace. He's on a 92 point pace, so it's definitely a step back. But with how bad things have gone in New York this year, that's not as bad as it could have been, honestly. If I had to bet, I would bet that he probably gets a little bit closer to a 100 point pace rest of the season. He is that good. But yeah, that's just a bet. Should be in the 95 point range at the least. Obviously not seeing the 120 points again. Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think we're going to see that even as a pace rest of the season. All right. I think we have reached the end of the live stream. Thanks, everybody, for joining us here. But I think that's going to be all that I've got for this episode. Hopefully it brought you some value, helped you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard and saw today came from Natural Stat Trick. Terrific for your resource. Many thanks to the band there for supplying the music for the podcast. Be sure to check out their Spotify as well. That's it, folks. Much love.